Right, so thanks, Anthony. As Anthony said, I'm Richard Coates. I'm Deputy Director for Highways at the Office of Rail and Road. So I'll give you a very brief explanation about what we do, what is the ORR, what's our role, and then I'll tell you very briefly about our priorities for Network Rail and for Highways England in delivering transport networks, road and rail networks that are fit for purpose. So what do we do? Well, fundamentally, ORR is about protecting the interests of road and rail users. So in rail, we've got a role in terms of health and safety regulation. We have inspectors on the ground enforcing health and safety law. But we also have an economic regulation role. So we hold Network Rail to account for delivery, making sure that it's doing the work necessary on its infrastructure to help keep trains moving and help minimize delays. And we're currently working with Network Rail and the department to establish what needs to be delivered by Network Rail over the next 5-year period through our periodic review 2018. In roads, we hold Highways England to account for its management of the strategic road network. So that's the main A roads and the motorways in England. And we monitor whether the company's delivering government's road investment strategy. And we report on its performance in areas like safety. So is it actually reducing the number of people that are killed and seriously injured on the network? We monitor it in areas like user satisfaction and also in whether it's keeping traffic flowing. We also have a role in advising government on the next road investment strategy. So Ian was talking about that earlier. Well, we're currently working with the department, with Highways England and with Transport Focus on what Road Investment Strategy 2 will look like. And across all of our remit, we publish reports, we publish information. So as shown on the slide, there are 4 of the reports we published in July of this year, including our annual Rail Health and Safety Report, our annual report on Network Rail's performance, and our annual assessment of Highways England's performance. So if you're interested in any of those are available on our website. So that was very briefly what we do, but as a regulator and monitor, what are our priorities? And I suppose the title of this presentation, A Transport System Fit for Purpose, kind of says it all. So firstly, we want to make sure that Network Rail and Highways England are delivering the right levels of performance. It's important that their plans reflect the levels of performance that their users want, informed by the good work of Transport Focus. And it's also important that they then deliver on those plans, and we monitor them to make sure that they do, and we take action if they don't. So in both road and rail, we're keen to understand performance on a regional level as well. We've been reinforcing the importance of Network Rail working with its stakeholders to define what it's going to do on a regional basis, and we're holding it to account now against its scorecards, which Network Rail agrees with its customers. And we're also carrying out work to understand how Highways England is performing on a regional basis by carrying out benchmarking, and we produce an annual benchmarking report, also available on our website. So we know, for example, that network condition, road condition in the southeast is worse than it is in the east and Midlands. And it's really important to us that Highways England and Network Rail are delivering the engineering works that are needed, including the sort of renewals works, as well as improving the network. The picture on this slide is of my team visiting the A14 Cambridge to Huntingdon scheme. It's really good to get out there and actually see a huge investment in the network like that being delivered after many years of talk about it. It's actually out there being delivered on the ground, and that's going to lead to real improvements in connectivity in the heartland. So the second thing we want to see is that transport networks are being delivered efficiently and that they represent good value for money. So we want to see costs of delivering infrastructure coming down over the long term, and we monitor and report on efficiency in both sectors. And then thirdly, we want to see networks which are fit for purpose not only now, but also in the future. So it's really important that Network Rail and Highways England have strong processes in place to plan for the future. And that includes making sure that the companies are planning to do enough maintenance and renewals work to deliver safe and high-performing networks over the long term. And we've just asked Network Rail's routes to assign an extra £1 billion worth of expenditure on renewals over the next 5 years. But it's also vital that the plans for networks are built on strong evidence, so including evidence of what stakeholders want. And both companies are taking steps to align their plans more closely to what stakeholders want. Network Rail through its route-based plans, and Highways England through the route strategies that were mentioned earlier. And both of the companies are working closely with Transport Focus to understand road and rail user perspectives. And it's really good to hear Martin mentioning earlier about HE's improved engagement on RIS2, and that's something which is important to us. We judge the company's plans partly on how good their engagement with stakeholders has been. And a final point from me, so more regional representation through bodies like England's Economic Heartland has got to be a good thing. It's a chance for regions to speak up with a much louder, much clearer, stronger voice on the improvements and aspects of performance that are really important to them. And it also helps make the case for key strategic connections like the Oxford to Cambridge Expressway. So hopefully that's given you a bit of oversight about our priorities. But I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Transport Focus, for those who haven't come across us before, are the independent consumer watchdog. We look after the interests of rail passengers in Great Britain, bus, coach and tram users in England, outside of London that is, and all users of motorways and major A roads, which is the strategic road network managed by Highways England. Three things about us. We are, as I say, a consumer organisation. We're evidence-based, so we do research, and that research finds out what users actually want. And we aim to be useful to those who use that transport service, those that provide it, and those who fund it. The idea behind that is to make sure that the voice of the user is heard. So, what are the key issues for road users? Firstly, safety. It's actually not a top-of-mind issue when we do research with users, and the reason for that is because it's assumed that roads, bridges, structures are actually safe. Effectively, the authorities, the powers that be, the people that look after that sort of stuff have taken care of it. But it's an assumed inbuilt that safety is important and is taken care of. Reliable journeys. People want to have a predictability. They want to be assured that if, for example, their journey usually takes an hour, if a sat-nav says that it takes an hour, that what they want is that journey to take that hour, and not then to have to build in lots of additional time to make that journey, which is unproductive. Obviously, disruption can be quite an issue, and we'll break that down into two areas, planned and unplanned. So looking at planned works, first of all, and clearly around the country, there's lots of investment in motorways and major A roads at the minute. But road users, unfortunately, think that they need to have those developments more with users in mind. So at the moment, really long lengths of motorway roadworks are something that road users don't want to see. They want to see shorter lengths of roadworks. They want to see more visible work activity. If they're being inconvenienced, they want to actually see the work being gotten on with a lot more quickly. And then to consider the overall impact of roadworks on and off the road network to make sure that people are not being unduly held up on their day-to-day. Ultimately, they want the basics to be delivered, and when we looked at priorities for road users, the quality of road surfaces by far came up as the top priority for improvement. They want smooth roads without bumps or undulations, no potholes, things like that. And the reason why that's really important to them, on a fast-moving road, or the perception is on a fast-moving road with lots of traffic, lots of high volumes of traffic, the road would be a lot less safe. And then other things as well about the basics, you'll see from the bottom photograph there, just an example up on the M1, where we want to be able to see signs and make sure that they're quite useful. And if that sign is overgrown, if it's got a defect, or if it's not clean, then that's quite an issue. And that's also linked to the customer service and the effectiveness of Highways England. And my last slide just talks about three different types of road user other than car drivers, because obviously we can sometimes just focus on the car driver. First of all, freight and coach drivers. Sometimes they tell us or they feel a lot less well treated on the road network. Obviously, professional drivers who spend probably more time out there than others, they want more input into the planning, more communication and better rest facilities. If you think, for example, with freight, the increased online shopping where you can order something today and receive it tomorrow means that there's a whole freight operation that runs overnight. If suddenly those routes are closed overnight, that can be a problem for freight users as well. So more common sense, more joined up thinking there as well. And a good example that they say that, you know, okay, you can shut the M1, for example, overnight, but then don't shut the alternative route, don't shut the M6 or something like that as well. So try to be a bit more joined up with that as well. I'm going to mention motorcyclists. Obviously, they feel quite vulnerable on faster roads, and that's why road surface is a particular issue to them, to make sure that they can get and use their journey safely. And then finally, cyclists, pedestrians and equestrians. They obviously can't use motorways, but they can use the rest of the strategic road network. And it's very important that their needs are thought about. Not only those that use those roads, but for example, if it's a motorway or a fast-moving road, it's about that provision to cross that major road as well. And making sure that we actually look at their needs at the start during planning rather than making adaptations later on, and they then actually have to fight for their needs as well. So these are the key issues that we think for road users. Thank you.
Steve Gooding, Director of the RSC Foundation, former Director General of DFT. He gave us Highways England. Steve, what are your thoughts on creating a great transport system?
Highways England and many other fantastic things, I'd just like to say. Right, I've got no slides here. I was asked to bring a sort of RSC Foundation motoring perspective, but I don't need any slides because the first slide you saw, the Slido voting, you mostly drove here. You know what the issues are. And even if that hadn't been the case, I could have relied on Councillor Tett, who actually had my list in his first slide. The issues around here: congested roads, country lanes, too many potholes, and poor mobile signal connectivity. Absolutely right. So I'm actually quite relieved that this is very much in the sights of England's economics heartland. You know what you've got to fix. And just as a snapshot, I set out to get here today by car from Cambridge. I set out at 6:30. By 8:30, I was starting to feel a bit concerned. It cannot possibly be the case in 2018 that it should take that long to get from one key place in the heartland to another, and to encounter quite so many, thankfully, miserable experiences. The A5 works. The Black Cat interchange, if you wanted to explain to anyone the issue and just give them one snapshot, the Black Cat interchange and the thought of the impact of the works and how they're going to be managed, all quite terrifying. Two things I just wanted to offer as a counter to answer your question: what has to be true, what's going to make the place great? The first is, when I was here 18 months ago, a lot of the focus was about the interaction between transport and housing. And I just want to say, let's not lose sight of that. There are three key things I think about when I'm thinking about lifestyle and where I'd like to live, and that's: where's my job, where do I live, and how do I get between the two? And these are really key. So absolutely need to think about business and business location, but we also need to keep in sight housing nature, and how that interacts. And one of the key things for the road network is going to be whether the East-West Rail project really does soak up as much commuter traffic as we're all hoping it will, because it's properly integrated with the new housing and the existing housing, so that we can use that and use it to its best effect. Because if we can't, that's going to make the road challenge much worse. So we need that integration. The other, I happily spent much of yesterday in one of those little colleges that Councillor Tett mentioned, over in Cambridge. You have, in Cambridge, a world-class construction engineering faculty. You have some of the brightest minds working on construction engineering anywhere And as someone who worries about roads and worries about the experience, worries about transport generally, what I would like to think is that those responsible for delivering those projects that you here today are so keen happen, people developing and delivering those projects are tapping into the expertise on your own doorstep to get them designed the best way and delivered efficiently and swiftly. Thank you.